Hello kids, good afternoon. This is teacher Tina. Today, Science 5. So, are you ready kids? So, before we start, please get your workbook and textbook. So, please open your workbook, page number 5. And textbook, please open your textbook, page number 16 to 21. So let's start. So today our topic is about interactions between living and non-living components. So this is living, this is non-living components. Again, this is living thing, this is non-living thing component. So the first is, what is environment? Environment is the surroundings around us. So environment is made up of all the living and non-living things around us that affects our lives. Again, environment is made up all the living and non-living things around us that affects our lives. So this is living things, this is non-living things. So we have 5 non-living components. Again, we have 5 non-living components. First is water. Number 2, sunlight. Number 3, air. Number 4, temperature. And number 5, soil. Again, 5 non-living components is water, sunlight, air, temperature, and soil. The first is water. Water is important to all living things. Living things cannot survive without water. If no water, living things cannot survive. So this is the source of water. This is the sources of water. Number 1 is river. Number 2 is lake. Number 3 is rain. Number 4 is groundwater. So groundwater is the water stored underground. Many people use groundwater for drinking. So we use for drinking. This is the sources of water. River, lake, rain, and groundwater. So we have living things need water, like animals. Animals need water. So animals need water for their bodies to function properly. Plants need water for photosynthesis and germination of seed. Plants need water to make food. Example is giraffe is drinking water from a river. So river, because river is water, water is non-living and giraffe is an living thing. So another is cacti in a desert. Different living things need different amount of water to survive. We have learned that camels and cacti can live with a very little of water. Little water. These camels in cacti. So next is some living things need a large amount of water. So need amount of water to survive. For example, rice plants needs a large amount of water to grow. Rice, they need a large amount of water. And another aquatic organism can only survive in water. So they need a large amount of water. Next is, however, too much water such as floods can kill some living things too. So if there's a flood, maybe they can kill some living things like human, animals, and plants. So too much water is not okay. So next is sunlight. So sunlight, this is the sunlight. Sunlight is number 2 non-living components. So the sun is the major source of light, heat, and energy for all living things on the earth. Animals need sunlight to see their surrounding, to catch their prey, and to avoid predators. Some animals bath in sun to warm up, like cheetah hunt during daytime. Cheetah, they get the food during daytime. Okay, this is to process how to make food. Animals also depend on the plants for oxygen. Plants release oxygen. Plants produce oxygen during the process of photosynthesis. During respiration, animals and plants give out carbon dioxide. Plants use carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis. So let's run. Then carbon dioxide, then release oxygen for the animals. And okay, next, during respiration is animals and plants give out carbon dioxide. Then plants use carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis. Then to make oxygen, to release oxygen, to make an animal carry out respiration. This is interdependence between animals for gases. Again, during respiration, animals and plants give out carbon dioxide. Then plants use carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis, to make food. Then release oxygen. Next is, another example is a fern plant. This is the fern plant growing on other tree. This fern plant growing on other tree. So plants need sunlight for photosynthesis. In tropical forests, most trees are tall. In order to get more, other smaller plants are growing on the other big trees like fern plant. They growing on the other tree. The big tree, they need more sunlight. So another is coral. They need sunlight. And also algae, they need sunlight. So living things and water also need sunlight. Corals and algae grow in the shallow seawater where sunlight can reach them. So these living things need sunlight. So another example is owl and bat. Animals like bat and owl are adapted to live in the dark environment. They live in the dark environment. Owls have sensitive, big eyes to see in the dark. Bats have sensitive hearing to detect their prey. So all and bat is depends in the environment. Then next is the third is air. So air around is supply oxygen to all organisms living on the land. Animals and plants need oxygen to carry our respiration. Air is very important for us. Air is very important for the living things like human, plants, and animals. So, these animals, aquatic organisms get dissolved oxygen from the water to respire. Some animals like mudskipper and catfish are adapted to live oxygen-derived water. They can get their oxygen supply from the air. So mudskipper, they need air, and also catfish, they need air to adapt to live oxygen-derived water. They can get oxygen supply from the air. Again, mudskipper and catfish need air. Next is mangrove trees have roots adapted to breathe and the muddy water since there is less oxygen. This is the less oxygen and mud. Some parts of the roots, this is the roots, grow out of the mud into the air to breathe. So mangrove is need air, less oxygen in the mud. This is another example of environment of air. Next is another example is plants also need carbon dioxide in the air to carry out photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide is also produced when animals and plants carry out respiration. So moving air is known as wind. Plants like rice and corn plants depends on wind to pollinate their flowers. Rice and corn plants produce a lot of pollen grains which are small and light. The pollen grain can be easily blown by wind to land on stigma. So, easily to blown. Example, easy to blow in the wind. Then another example is dandelion plants blow by the wind. Like this. Wind also helps to disperse fruits and seeds. For example, the seeds of dandelion, which have light and fine hair, can be easily blown away by the wind. So if there's a wind, the seeds go anywhere. And that is fallen grain. Do you call that fallen grain? So adapt the air. And the next is temperature. So temperature of an area affects types of animals and plants living there. Do you still remember how camels and cacti adapt to survive in deserts and how polar bears survive in polar region? So the temperatures, they have a cold and hot. We call that is temperature. So the other example, this is another example of living things depends in the temperature, like a polar bear. So we have also learned that a polar bear are adapted to cold habitats. They live in the cold habitats. During winter, most animals will hibernate by going into deep sleep. to survive the winter without food.